Hey everyone, welcome to Play Hooky with me. My name is Roz, and today I want to share with you a very simple ripple blanket using a version of the popular fan and feather stitch. So in this video I'm going to share some quick measuring tips to help you get started on your own blanket, how to make this stitch, and at the end of the video I'm going to show you a couple of ideas on how to handle the border. This is super beginner friendly. I really think you're going to enjoy this stitch, so let's go ahead and get started. For this video, I am using a medium 4-weight yarn. This is by Loops and Threads. The required hook size for this is a 6.5 millimeter, but for this particular yarn, I was finding that was a bit too big for me, so I played with a few sizes and settled on the 4.5 millimeter. I've added all the specifics about the blanket that I'm making in the description box below, the yardage I plan on using, how many skeins I think I'm going to use, just to hopefully give you some kind of guide or gauge to get you started. You really can't get much simpler than this. We're only working with double crochets and it's a very easy 2-row repeat. We'll be working in multiples of 17 and I'll talk about that more in just a second. But the first row is going to be double crochets all the way across, and then for your second row, double crochets only again. Our sequence is going to be 6 double crochets, skip 1 double crochet 5 times, 12 double crochets, and then repeat the sequence. So like I said, we're working in multiples of 17. So for this sample, I'll do 34 stitches to show you the ripple. Okay, I'm chaining 34. And then I like to add a little stitch marker when I'm finished because I want to make sure that I get the turning chain right. So go ahead and chain 2 or 3 depending on how many chains you like for your double crochets. I like 3, so I'm going to do 3. If you decided on a chain 3 also, go ahead and do a double crochet into the 5th chain from the hook. That's the one right behind where you finished. If you chained 2, then do a double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. That one will be right behind your stitch marker. Okay, great. And now we're just going to be doing double crochets in every stitch across. Take your time with this, being careful not to skip any. Okay, once you have your double crochets completed, check and double check that you have the right stitch count that you want. This is the main time that you really want to get this right because the rest of it is easy to fix, but if you have this wrong, you're going to be really frustrated. Making sure to count that very first turning chain, count all the way across. Okay, and at this point, go ahead and chain up 2 or 3 depending on what you like for double crochets. Turn. Your chain 2 or 3 is always going to serve as your double crochet throughout this entire pattern. We're going to be working on half of a ripple on the sides and then a complete ripple in the middle. So in the same stitch that you made your double crochet turning chain, do a double crochet. We just did our first 2 double crochets. We're doing 2 more in the next stitch. And now in the next stitch, 2 more. 2, 4, 6. Now we're going to do our skipping sequence. That's skip 1, double crochet, skip 1, double crochet. Skip. 1, skip. Two, skip, going into the next stitch, 3, skip, going into the next stitch, 4, skip, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to skip again, and a good tip here is to just remember that you're always going to have a skip before and after your clusters. So skipping and going straight into our first cluster, we're doing 12 double crochets in multiples of 2. So that means we're going to be doing 2 double crochets in the next 6 stitches. Two, four, and 12. Okay, and that's it. So now we're going to get back into our double crochets of 5. Remember, we skipped that first one, and now we do 1, skip, 2, skip, 3, skip, 4, skip, 5. Okay, now we're down to the very end, and we should have 4 available chains or stitches to work into. If you don't, take a look back and see where you may have skipped a place. Remember, we skip before and after each cluster. We're doing our next side, so we only need 6. And here is our turning chain. So what I like to do is just get in the top of that chain to do my final 2. Okay. And you guys, that's all there is to it. That's how you do your ripple. Adding a second color is really easy to do. Right before you fasten off, undo that last stitch so you have 2 loops left. Put those back on your hook. Bring in your next color, and you're going to finish that stitch with your next color. Just pull it through both loops. And what I like to do at this point with the previous color is snip it and tie these together and then start. That way it stays in place. Then what I like to do with the tail from the previous row is I like to weave it into the top of this row where I start the next row. And then with this tail, I just leave it alone until I'm finished with this next row sequence and then weave it into it just like I did with this one. After you've chained up 2 or 3 and turned your work, now it's time to start the sequence again. Remember, the first row is just double crochets. Quick tip here, do not do a double crochet into this first stitch that you see. Your turning chain is serving as your first double crochet. So go into the very next one and then continue on with your double crochets all the way across. Don't forget to also do your double crochet into the turning chain at the end of this row here. That's a very easy place to forget. I'm going to stop there because I think this is so simple. There's really nothing else you need to know on this as far as building your stitches. Let's go ahead and just move on to when you're ready to do your border. Here's a quick sample I whipped up to talk a little bit about borders. I haven't committed or decided on one myself yet because I'm still working on the main portion of the blanket. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you some options while I'm thinking about it, and I'm sure you'll be wondering about this too. So the quick and easy simple border that you could do first is just a single crochet around your complete blanket, either to just finish your blanket, or that can be the start or your foundation for a more elaborate border. You'd simply do single crochets all the way across. In your corners, I would recommend a single crochet chain 2 single crochet or chain 3 depending on how big your yarn was. For your sides, I would suggest 2 single crochets in the spaces. Here is your first row, second row, third row, and so on. So 2 single crochets would work naturally here, then here, here, and then in here. You can play with that depending on if that's making it too tight, then I would add some single crochets here and there just to kind of loosen it back up. Another option would be to do a double crochet border. I just did this up so it's a little bit easier to see. All I did was I did double crochets all the way across. In the corners, I did 5 double crochets and then continued on with 2 double crochets per row. So there are 2 in that corner for that first row, second row, then third, fourth, etc. And then just continuing on to the other side. I did try just 3 initially, but it was pulling up and puckering like that too much, so I knew I needed to go bigger. If you're finding that this is puckering here as well too much for you with just 2 double crochets per row, then just add some here and there, and again it will go flat. Okay, and here is an idea if you don't want to have the ripple on the top and bottom of your blanket. If you want it to have a straight edge all the way across, I would suggest that you play with something like this. So this is just a guide. This is not a pattern per se. This is just to give you some ideas. And so how I focused on this was at the very top I did single crochets, and then here in that last double crochet in that cluster I did half double crochets above it. And then when I started moving into the 5, I did double crochets in the first 2, treble crochet in the center, working my way back up, double, double. We're moving back into the clusters again. So for those first 2, I did half doubles and then continued on with single crochets and then repeated the sequence. Now, not sure if that's perfect or not, but that gives you kind of an idea of where to start. And like I said, you may need to play with this. You may need to do more trebles in here to pull this up. But I think this would get pretty darn close, especially after finishing, and then you could block it into place and you should be good to go. I think for mine, I'm just going to end it with a ripple. I won't be adding a straight edge, but I don't know. When I get to that point, I'll let you all know. But again, this is how I would handle it if I was trying to work a straight edge.